Good evening. Thank you all for coming. I am Joanne Richards. I'm the, okay. Yeah. I didn't touch it. It's not me.
Just fell asleep.
It's not up there.
Well, let's see here.
There we go. Start it over again. There we go. Okay, we'll start again. I'm Joanne Richards. I'm the honorary regent of the Lady Knox Chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Mary Kelly, a fellow Lady Knox member and the project manager of the book. And since he's here, I'm going to introduce her husband, Dick, who did the maps in the book. So Dick's here. I'd also like to recognize and thank Marlene Groves, who's sitting here in front. She was instrumental in the writing of the book because we relied heavily on her vital records books. Thank heavens for those. I want to thank the Rockland Public Library for welcoming us to this evening's presentation. Fighting for freedom, fighting for survival is, not going, there it is. There you go. Is a local history told to the lives of real people. You'll see names you already know: Acorn, Bales, Gregory, Rankin, Robbins, Spear, and many more, a lot of whom are still found in the area. Today we will give you an overview of the themes, sections, and extra materials in the book, as well as the background for the book, the why and the how. For those of you who may not know, the Daughters of the American Revolution is a nonprofit, non-political, volunteer women's service organization. It was founded in 1890 and has headquarters in Washington, D.C. Members must prove direct descent from a Revolutionary War patriot. The DAR is dedicated to promoting patriotism, preserving American history, and securing America's future through better education for children. In November of 2014, we viewed the cemetery and did a cleanup. The chapter then voted to restore the cemetery, and fundraising and grant writing began. The first step was numbering and photographing the stones. In the summer of 2017, we spent 15 days cleaning and restoring the gravestones. On September 17 of 2017, we held a rededication of the restored cemetery. In October of 2017, the cemetery was placed on the National Register of Historic Places, and a plaque stating this was added to the new monument. Over 2 weeks in August of 2017, Lady Knox Chapters, with help from members of the Maine Old Cemetery Association and the Rockland City Cemetery crew, assisted Joe Farinini, who's also here this evening, from Gravestone Matters to clean, repair, and restore the gravestones. As part of the project, we cataloged each stone with pictures before and after. We recorded the epitaphs so they will not be lost. We recorded the relationships of those buried there, and we mapped the entire cemetery. The old monument was repurposed, and the new monument, with plaques honoring Isaiah Tolman, 24 Revolutionary War patriots, and the National Register of Historic Places, was placed. At the close of the ceremony, Mary Kay Felton, regent of Lady Knox Chapter, said, "Today we restore those persons to their rightful place in Rockland's long and rich history. During their lives, they served their community and this nation, so that someday we would be able to do the same. Now we have that chance. We are the next page in the Tolman story. Let the tale of our work at Tolman be worth telling, and may the lives of those buried there be remembered." She had no idea we were going to write a book. When Isaiah Tolman donated an acre of land as a public burying ground in 1783, he planted seeds of American history. From the first shots fired in the Revolution in 1775 until peace was declared in 1814, the Tolman Patriots often faced military and economic threats from the British. They spent 40 years always looking over their shoulders. At the same time, they fought the elements, the rocky land and the distant landholders. 2 benches were made from the original monument and placed in the cemetery so visitors may sit and reflect. In 2020, the chapter dedicated 2 Veterans Administration marble gravestones to replace heavily damaged and missing stones for 2 Revolutionary veterans, and a stone made locally from remnants of the original monument for a patriot who gave patriotic service to the cause. We continue to monitor the cemetery, make repairs as necessary, and we place flags to honor them on Memorial Day.
Excuse me, Joanne, how is the cemetery monitored?
We watch it. I drive by it a couple times a week.
Is there any GPS satellite?
I'll answer questions when we're done, Beth, okay? Who are these men? All we had were names, date of birth, date of death, and service records. The mission was to humanize these men and bring them to life. In the beginning, we had short biographical sketches. We found far more information than we expected. It's history told through the lives of 40 men and 24 families. The Lady Knox Chapter members were the writers and the researchers. You will note the different styles of biographies in the book. The reviewers said, "Tell me more." Our editors helped make it flow. The artwork for the cover is by the artist's daughter of a chapter member. Mapping of the cemetery and the home locations allows readers to locate graves and homes of families. Let me begin by saying that Eaton's history of Thomaston, Rockland, and South Thomaston was instrumental in our research. Everyone who researches Midcoast history is in his debt. The Lady Knox Chapter honored Eaton by placing a bronze plaque on his house in Warren in 1974. This book covers a broad range of subjects, including history set in a local context, 40 biographies, life of the earliest local settlers, families, local experience, natural environment, origins and cultures, property rights, 2 wars of independence, the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812. It has a section on the Tolman Cemetery, the repair projects, the epitaphs, and a map. Altogether, a history told from the bottom up. The content of the book was shaped by our audience. The book was written for local families, historians, and genealogists. The biographies are portals to the past, when early settlers of present-day Thomaston and Rockland fought the British and nature. History buffs, family detectives, and the curious are invited into this version of the past. They were ordinary men living in extraordinary times. Who are the Tolman Patriots? We only knew they shared experiences of war and burial place. Throughout the book, we refer to these men as Tolman Patriots. A patriot can mean military service. The Revolutionary War, they served in the local militia or the Continental Army, Navy, or State Navy. The War of 1812, they served closer to home in the local militia or on the seas as privateers. Or it can mean patriotic service. In this, a patriot is any man or woman who demonstrated unfailing loyalty to the cause of American independence from England. This can be holding town office, being on the Committee of Public Safety, aiding the cause with food, clothing, or money. The book contains a number of themes, beginning with those in the title. Fighting for freedom. We go into depth exploring the where, when, and with whom these men fought. Different experience of militia and continental soldiers, the attacks on Midcoast civilians by the British, the lasting effects of wars, their pensions and their disabilities, the lack of defense by Massachusetts and Maine statehood. Over 2 generations, these early settlers fought multiple wars, wars for independence against the British Empire and loyalist neighbors. Other family members had wars to fight, the French and Indian War and the Civil War. Our ancestors seemed to fight one war after another in America until 1865. Fighting for survival gives background about their primitive living conditions, heavy wooded wilderness, rustic shelters, harsh weather, including 1816, the year without a summer worldwide, where it snowed every month. The challenging environment and disease, a battle of survival against forest, cold, drought, rocky soil, wild animals, and unknown and untreatable diseases. It sees the value of large families, neighbors, and relationships to help clear the land, build the shelters, and provide for their families. It goes into the migration within New England, the lack of land in Massachusetts, contested property rights, multiple claims to the land, a struggle against powerful absentee proprietors and other settlers, difficulty in obtaining clear title to their land. There are themes that are not in the title. There is the development of local communities and industries. Life may be short for men, mothers, and children. People were on the move. It's multi-generational genealogies of families. They endured with determination and each other. This book tells their stories. It begins at the end of the French and Indian War in 1763. The French are gone. The District of Maine is open to settlement. 1763 was a watershed year. The French and Indian War had ended. 88 years of colonial and global warfare is over. There's a new British territory. The District of Maine is peaceful. Maine is a district of Massachusetts, and it is an opportunity for migration. But the Royal Proclamation of 1763 was issued by British King George III on 7 October 1763. It followed the Treaty of Paris, which formally ended the French and Indian War and transferred French territory in North America to Great Britain. The proclamation, at least temporarily, forbade all new settlements west of a line drawn along the Appalachian Mountains, which was designated as an Indian reserve. Exclusion from the vast regions of Trans-Appalachia created discontent among Britain and colonial land speculators and potential settlers. Western expansion was stopped. But farmland was in short supply in Massachusetts. Maine was the safety valve. Maine's potential was known from previous attempts of settlement during the French and Indian War. The aspirations here were for land, farms, timber, and mills. Merchants would send products from Maine to the Boston area, and people could then sail down east in the empty cargo ships. The term down east is nautical terminology, referring to direction rather than location. In the warm months most suitable for sailing, the prevailing winds along the coast of New England and Canada blow from the southwest, meaning ships sail downwind to go east. The settlers came from Massachusetts. Many knew others who had come earlier, family, neighbors, or other relationships. Many were from the Attleboro region of Massachusetts. There were brother, fathers, spouses. Some were Germans that Waldo had brought in, and there were the Ulster Scots. When we started this project, we expected to see our Patriots serving locally. We were surprised to see that they served far from home as well in the District of Maine. This map shows the various locations of engagements except those that happened at sea, including the English Channel. Surprising, isn't it? We had a Minuteman at Lexington Concord. They defended their homes attacked by the British on the Penobscot Bay. The militia fortified Pine Hill with cannon overlooking Glen Cove. In an encampment with Penobscot Indians is the area where Penn Bay Medical Center is today. They participated in the Penobscot Expedition and the destruction of the Navy. The Continentals served in the siege of Boston and the placement of cannon on Dorchester Heights, driving out the British. They were at the siege of Quebec City, the Battle of Saratoga, which was the turning point that brought the French into the war. At Tiverton, Rhode Island, some of them were on a secret mission. They served on ships in the Long Island Sound, the Hudson River, the English Channel, and the British prison ships. Here's a little history refresher. Castine was a Tory town where the British hoped to station a fleet. In July of 1779, Americans amassed their largest number of vessels for the war, with more than 2,000 troops under Commodore Dudley Saltonstall to dislodge the British. A direct assault was unsuccessful only because he pulled them back. But Saltonstall refused to risk his fleet by providing naval support. When 10 British warships arrived a month later, the American force was outnumbered. Saltonstall fled up the Penobscot River to abandon and burn the fleet. The Penobscot expedition was a catastrophic failure and nearly bankrupted Massachusetts, who had insured the ships. Maine was left to its own defenses. It was the worst naval defeat until Pearl Harbor. By the time we got here, we realized that developing a chapter for each of the wars was needed. So each chapter gives unit structure, weapons, both continental and militia service and privateers. It relates personal service to the war at large. It locates battles and missions. It highlights the local attacks and major battles, and it connects men who served together. This chart is an example of the format we used to link our Tolman Patriots to their service and to each other. This is the War of 1812 Massachusetts Voluntary Militia and Federalized Chart. There's also one in the book for the Revolutionary War Militia and Continental Service troops. The names of the Patriots are bold. The chart includes location and dates of each action. These are the families of the Tolman Patriots. The parentheses indicate the number of members of the family who served in the war. Let me give you a few snippets from the biographies. 4 members of the Brewster family, 3 generations buried in Tolman Cemetery, served in the Revolutionary War or the War of 1812. Zadok, his son Darius, and Darius's sons Benjamin and Asa. Like many families who lived in Plymouth, Massachusetts and the surrounding area for generations, Zadok and his children are descendants of Mayflower Pilgrims. Zadok and Darius served on the Shark, a Connecticut rogue galley at Battle of Tappan Zee in 1776. Darius was a prisoner on the infamous prison ship HMS Jersey at age 15, captured on his 4th voyage during the war. Zadok bought 20 acres of land from Henry Knox for $1, noting in the deed, Zadok had served as a good soldier during the Revolutionary War with Great Britain. Darius had a land dispute with Dr. Ezekiel Dodge in the area of today's Bog Road. You all know Dodge Mountain. It should have been Brewster Mountain. Eaton reports that Darius was angry that Dr. Dodge and a gang of men were cutting grass on land both claimed, though Brewster had held the better title. Darius took a shot at the legs of Dr. Dodge, but when Dodge stooped over, he was hit, quote Eaton, in the fleshy portion of his posterior. Jacob Keene, Sr. and Jr. Jacob Keene, Sr. was an early frontiersman and Maine land speculator. He was described as an able seaman in his early years, likely plying the coast of Maine and Massachusetts, transporting goods such as timber, firewood, fish, and furs. He acquired land in the Pemaquid Peninsula region, the area later known as Bristol and later still as Bremen, Maine. When Jacob was about 25 years old, he brought his young bride, age 17, to this region inhabited by just a few frontiersmen and regularly visited by Native Americans. Jacob Sr. came from Pembroke, Massachusetts to Hog Island in Bremen, and then to the northeast corner of what is now Rockland. He arrived in Thomaston in 1770 with the first 8 of their 14 children. Both Jacobs served on the Penobscot expedition. Jacob Jr. was about 19 when he served as a private during the Penobscot expedition in Captain Philip M. Ulmer's company, Colonel Samuel McCobb's regiment, from July 1779 for 2 months, 16 days. Jacob Sr. was among the earliest burials in Tolman Cemetery. In many ways, the Thomas and Spear family almost did not happen. If not for the miraculous survival of Jonathan Spear during the French and Indian War in 1757, the family would never have made their mark in Maine. He served in French and Indian War at Fort William Henry Massacre. He was one of 2 Tolman Patriots who survived the massacre. He purchased land at the south end of the meadows on West Meadow Road near Josiah Tolman, James Fales, and Constant Rankin. They harvested salt marsh hay to feed their animals in the winter. They raised grains to mill into flour and cultivated corn, potatoes, and other vegetables. They planted apple orchards and harvested the abundant wild berries found growing there. He was a captain of the 1st Company, Colonel Mason Wheaton's 4th Lincoln County Regiment of Massachusetts Militia. He was a Committee of Correspondence, Inspection, and Safety member and appointed warden of the town. His son, William Spear, fought for freedom in the War for Independence from Britain, just as his father, Jonathan, had. He enlisted at age 15 and was stationed at Camden and St. George. William Spear and his brother, Jonathan Spear, Jr., formed the Spear Wharf Company on Owl's Head Bay, which is now Rockland Harbor. He owned and piloted vessels built in Thomaston, quarried and processed lime during the industry's early days. In the year 1798-9, the sloop Dolphin was built at the shore, the area near Owl's Head Bay, by William Spear and Mark Dexter. By 1807, the only coaster carrying lime was the sloop William, commanded by Captain William Spear. 1813, Captain William Spear's schooner Oliver was captured by the British schooner Fly, flying the American flag as a decoy. He had ill luck. It was captured twice more. Although Isaiah Tolman, the patriarch of the Tolman family, spent a large part of his life in Thomaston, providing patriotic service during the Revolution, his biography is included because of the property he donated to the town of Thomaston for a burial ground in 1783. He is recognized on the Tolman Cemetery monument, although not buried in Tolman Cemetery, but on Matinicus Island. Isaiah had 3 wives and 21 children. He was a blacksmith and remembered for his grist mill at the foot of the hill by Tolman Cemetery. He held town offices during the Revolution. In 1779, he was chosen to be on a committee to consider the proceedings of a convention at Concord, Massachusetts, held July 14 on the currency and regulation of prices. His 3 sons, Curtis, Jeremiah, and Samuel, served during the Revolution and have biographies in the book. We noticed as we looked into the family genealogies how the Patriots were interconnected through the generations. This chart shows this. The blue lines are the Revolutionary War families. The green lines are their children. The red lines are the War of 1812 families, and the orange are their children. You will notice that only 3 of the Tolman Patriots, those shown in gray, are not related to any of these other families. While you don't see them, Patriots like the Worcester and Crockett's do have other relationships to at least one of the other families. 25 years after the Revolution began, embargoes had a serious impact on families struggling to survive. Urban and industrial development began creating new occupations. The failure of Massachusetts to defend Maine in the War of 1812 contributed to Maine's statehood in 1820. Many of the men in the War of 1812 were true sons of the Revolution. Some were sons of the early settlers, and 12 of our 16 who had fathers who served in the Revolution. Some were new settlers from Maine, New Hampshire interior, and the Fox Islands, which is now Vinyl Haven and North Haven. Often unmarried young siblings of Revolutionary War patriots seeking economic opportunities. This was a generation of merchants, miners, and mariners. There's a large deposit of limestone that runs vertically along Old County Road from Thomaston to Camden, resulting in some of the deepest quarries in the country. And you'll see those as you travel Old County Road. The lime industry drove the need for shipbuilders, barrel makers, miners, and laborers to feed the lime kilns. Lime was in demand, but a dangerous cargo for ships. There was also a doctor, shoemaker, revenue boat captain, to name a few. Family farms supplied the necessary foods and the animals to haul the limestone to the kilns. During the Napoleonic War, we're trying to stay neutral as Britain and France are fighting it out. But the British seized 10,000 sailors, resulting in the Embargo Act of 1807, a general trade embargo on all foreign nations that was enacted by the United States Congress. Much broader than the ineffectual 1806 Non-Importation Act, it represented an escalation of attempts to persuade Britain to cease impressment of American sailors and to respect American sovereignty and neutrality. The Non-Intercourse Act lifted all embargoes on American shipping except cargoes bound for Britain or France. Enacted March 1 of 1809, that law exacerbated tensions with Britain, eventually leading to the War of 1812. This war was an economic war. Blockades and embargoes stifled the commerce, unemployment and inflation rose. Very unpopular war, as seen in A Ruinous and Unhappy War by James H. Ellis. This is a great resource if you want to do more research on the War of 1812. In 1812, the British claimed eastern Maine as their territory. Merchants became smugglers. Smuggling was a natural response to the economic hardship caused by trade restrictions. Mainers were dependent upon the sea for the import of food supplies and most manufactured goods and the export of lumber and fish. Men could not fish or trade without a chance of losing their vessels. Illicit smuggling trade with British developed, especially at Castine and Eastport. Smugglers became privateers. Federal government issued letters of marque, authorized merchant ships to capture enemy vessels. The letters legalized acts that otherwise would have been piracy. Merchant or smuggling ships could be refit with arms to intercept other vessels. The U.S. revenue cutters were unable to stop or control the smugglers. Although the cutters had the government's authority, confronting suspicious vessels had its risks. As the war continued and the war with Napoleon came to an end, the British Navy could send more ships from Europe. The merchants, smugglers, privateers, cutters, and British Navy were all in the bay looking to find or escape each other. When I say the bay, I mean Penobscot Bay. In 1814, the British Navy was about to converge on the Midcoast. On the night of September 7, 1814, 8 British warships were seen in Owl's Head Bay. Again, that's Rockland Harbor today. At the coast, local federalized troops were sent to stop the illegal trading with the British. The Eastport area militia often were involved in or ignored smuggling. Their interference prevented the federalized troops from succeeding. When the British did invade in force in mid-1814, it was left to local militia to mount the defense. Militia mobilizations successfully discouraged enemy interventions. In the summer of 1814, the British launched guerre de razzia, raiding warfare. That brought the fight to civilian targets. The British would swoop in and capture a town. The British were advancing from both north and south, kicking off each town with Penobscot Bay, the point where their fleet would meet up. The British Navy was about to invade Midcoast. They terrorized the people, coming ashore in shaving mills, taking anything they wanted, food, cattle, pigs. They burned boats and vessels. In Rockland Harbor, the 6-gun British privateer, I thinks to myself, would fight the local militia at Jameson Point. Major General William King called up the 11th Division of the District Militia to keep watch on the coast from Belfast to Bath. That September, the consensus was that Camden would be the next. Colonel Foote activated the 5th Infantry Regiment on September 2, 1814. Companies were to assemble at Camden Harbor, equipped for service with 3 days' provisions. In October, the capture of a British ship and the taking of its cargo resulted in the British in Castine sending the 38-gun frigate HMS Furies to Camden Harbor. The captain captured 2 prominent citizens, and Camden was held for ransom. As you can see on this map, the area from Eastport to Castine is occupied by the British, who named the new territory New Ireland. September of 1813 saw combat off Pemaquid, between the brigantines HMS Boxer and USS Enterprise. Even this action began with smuggling. The plan went awry. The Boxer fired her cannon, which alerted the USS Enterprise to its presence. The battle, which probably heard on shore, raged back and forth for an hour between Monhegan Island and the mainland. Engagements are indicated on this map, either British attacks or to do with smuggling. There were firefights at Jameson Point and Monroe Island on either side of what is now Rockland Harbor. As mentioned before, Camden was held captive. The 74-gun HMS Bulwark was working her way up the coast from Massachusetts in mid-June. She destroyed ships at Biddeford Pool on the 16th and seized others at the mouth of the Kennebec on the 20th before entering the Sheepscot River. She then set her sights on Thomaston. On June 22, 1814, the Bulwark anchored off the St. George Peninsula with the goal of plundering Thomaston. They burned boats and seized vessels in Cushing and Broad Cove. Thomaston should have been an easy target. As in the Revolution, there are multiple members of families in the War of 1812. So I'll give you a few snippets of the book. William Brown made a living by doing the hard and dangerous work of quarrying and burning lime. As a young man, he served in the local militia as the British threatened his community. And like many local War of 1812 veterans, William's life was cut short. Men of his generation often turned to mining the white lime rock, not tilling the soil. William left little evidence of his life except for his wife and children. William Brown turned 20 in 1814, and during October and November of that year, he served as a private in the Camden militia, where his uncle, William Brown, was a sergeant. They were part of Colonel Erastus Foote's regiment, and Kelvin Curtis's company activated to protect Camden from British ships in the Penobscot Bay. He worked the quarries at Brown's Corner, the area which is now kind of like the corner of Old County Road and Limerock Street. That's Brown's Corner. Like many War of 1812 veterans, he died at a young age, leaving a widow with children to raise. Josiah Ingraham III lived his brief life entirely in Thomaston. His father Josiah and uncles Joseph and Job had come from Gloucester, Massachusetts after the Revolution and bought large tracts of land on what would become Ingraham's Point at the south end of Rockland. Josiah was born into this large family of aunts, uncles, and cousins on July 13, 1796, the son of Josiah Ingraham II and Hannah Counts. In 1814, Josiah served with his cousins, Coit, John, and Isaac Ingraham, as privates in Captain Archibald G. Coombs' company of Colonel Erastus Foote's regiment, Massachusetts Militia, raised at Thomaston, called out again in September 20 and 25 in 1814 for service in Camden and Thomaston. Living at Ingraham Point, he would have witnessed the arrival of the British warships in Rockland Harbor in 1814. Josiah died on May 17, 1824, in the 28th year of his life, leaving a 25-year-old widow with two young sons, a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old infant. Her father-in-law, Josiah Ingraham II, was appointed guardian of the children. Estate inventory is interesting. It totaled $1,533.40, suggesting he likely operated a small mercantile store, but he had debts totaling $1,943.31. Enoch Lovejoy was a country doctor. In the first weeks of his life, the tide of the Revolution would turn to favor the Americans at Yorktown. As a young man, he and his brother moved to Thomaston. Enoch soon married and raised a family in a house near his office. For 4 decades, Enoch practiced medicine at Brown's Corner. He had married the daughter of an innkeeper, William Tilson. He set up practice at Brown's Corner, which is now, as I said, currently the corner of Old County Road and Limerock Street. Enoch was a surgeon's mate during the War of 1812. His bio includes how doctors at the time studied medicine, training under an established physician, and the kind of illness and injuries he might have treated. Enoch became a widower when his wife Martha died at the age of 43, leaving him with 3 children under 10, including his infant son. Elkanah Spear was part of the close-knit family of Jonathan and Margaret McDougall Spear. He lived on his farm, bordering those of his brothers, cousins, and uncles. He was a member of the state legislature during Maine's formative years. Elkanah served the town as a selectman, treasurer, deputy sheriff, and representative. He served his country as a soldier in the War of 1812. Elkanah was also a successful businessman and a father of 9 children. He was captain of the Thomaston North Company of Infantry with service at Thomaston, Lerman Cove, and Camden. He was a sawmill operator, and he held shares of the Spear Wharf Company. He quarried limestone and Thomaston marble on a tract of land on the Old County Road. Charles Spofford was an entrepreneur and solid citizen whose life was cut short by illness. He was actively involved in his community and business enterprises. Each venture and acquisition seemed to lead to the next. Charles had the vision to locate along the shore where Rockland commerce would develop and allow pragmatism to succeed. He came from Pelham, New Hampshire with his brother John, and they both started as shoemakers. In 1806, Charles Spofford, the Ulmers, and Josiah Ingraham were the only 3 merchants trading at the foot of what is now Lime Rock Street in downtown Rockland. In 1809, he purchased a quarter interest in the Spears Wharf Company. He was a merchant and an inspector of lime. Charles was a representative on the Committee of Safety in 1812 and an adjutant for Major Thomas McCrate's battalion of cavalry. To protect his mercantile business, Charles engaged in smuggling and took a share in the Fane, a British privateer captured in 1814. He dies at 42, leaving his wife Lucy and 5 daughters. However, Lucy continues to develop more business. Life on the Midcoast chapter provides context for place, time, and events to supplement the biographies. Life on the Midcoast describes how people lived in this region of Maine in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the wild landscape, the colder climate, daily household activities, and political situations differed greatly. Hard work and primitive living conditions were unlike those of the established towns of southern New England. As Ken Burns has said, what is history but the collection of individual biographies? So, what is in a biography? Biographies of the Tolman Patriots form the core of the book. Each account features key life events. Specifics about their early years and where and how they lived locally are included when possible. A separate summary follows with details of the veteran, spouse or spouses, parents, and children, recorded in a concise genealogical manner for easy reference. Biographies appear in birth order from oldest to youngest when there is more than one Tolman Patriot in a family. Chapters vary based on the amount of information found and the writer. Family genealogy information includes birth, death, and marriage of the parents of the Patriot and his spouse, as well as birth and death dates of spouses. The children of the Patriots have their birth, death, and marriage data as well. Any military service and exceptional things in their lives are noted. Sources for all statements of fact are fully documented. The information which is not fully documented is identified as such. There are over 3,500 footnotes to enable you to see the sources. To make things easier for the reader, we also included a chart of all the Tolman Patriots, a timeline of the events from 1754 to 1850, summaries of military service, a Patriot family homesite map based on extensive review of their deeds, the Tolman Cemetery chapter and map, the Tolman Cemetery index with full lists of burials, epitaphs, and relatives, an every name index. For those who want more, we have recommended reading. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. This is the Tolman Patriot chart. The Revolutionary War Patriots are on the inside. The War of 1812 Patriots are on the outside. Each block gives their name, place born, Tolman Cemetery number, and year of birth and death. The Patriot Family Homesite map, I want to thank Brian Harden for permitting the use of the map from the Shore Village story as our starting point, and a special thank you to Richard Dick Kelly, our cartographer extraordinaire. who took the information we gleaned from the land deeds and assisted us to place the families, then created the beautiful map you see here. These are the initial home sites of our patriots. Some moved and purchased land elsewhere within the area. The Tolman Cemetery Grave Index is an alphabetical listing of all the gravestones in Tolman Cemetery, with grave number, surname, given name, inscription on the stone, and relatives also buried in Tolman with grave number. This links to the Tolman Cemetery map, numbered gravestones. This is the first of 4 pages of the cemetery map included in the book. The numbers in the small squares match the numbers in the Tolman Grave Index. I would just like to take a moment to mention that the chapter was honored to be selected by the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution, America 250 Committee, with an article about our book, Fighting for Freedom, Fighting for Survival, in the May-June issue of the American Spirit magazine, published by the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution. And this is a huge honor. Because of the date of that publication, America 250 DAR projects already numbered over 1,600. In the 21st century, such men appear legendary. But sifting through the details of their lives shows that they had common human aspirations and cares. The reason to value them is not to imagine their greater virtue, but to recognize their shared humanity. They were ordinary men bound together by loyalty to neighbors and country who lived during an extraordinary era. They settled in a hard-scrapple frontier between ocean and forest. Some were fathers who fought the British in one war, others were sons who fought them in the next. Over 2 generations, their towns and livelihoods changed. Each life is a portal into the history of Midcoast Maine. And that ends our presentation, and if anybody has any questions, I'll try to answer them. No? No, Bethany left. Okay, thank you. And thank you all for coming. And we do have the books available if you'd like to purchase them.